Welcome to the Couples Expert Podcast with Stuart Fensterheim, LCSW, your source for the latest tips and practical down-to-earth advice on creating emotionally connected, thriving relationships. Now, here's Stuart.
Hello, and welcome back to the Couples Expert Podcast. This is Stuart Fensterheim, the Couples Expert. Thank you again for joining me on our journey of connection. Each and every week, we discuss being open and vulnerable with our partners, having a truly special relationship. We now know how to help couples to go from feeling of disconnection to a feeling of connection, where you both know just how important you are to each other. You're reminded of this every single day in everything you do. Today is a special day on the Couples Expert Podcast. I have a guest on my show, Dr. Susan Johnson. Dr. Johnson is the author of the respected Hold Me Tight book, 7 Conversations for a Lifetime of Love and Love Sense. She is a researcher, psychologist, and basically a really giving, down-to-earth person. She teaches couples and therapists this new science of love, and with all the latest research on how to have a loving, caring relationship, she helps couples develop secure relationships where you know how important you are to your partner. What I'm hoping to do today is have a dialogue with Dr. Johnson all about the knowledge that she has, that she typically shares with the counselors that she trains all over the world. But I want to have her put it into layman's terms. I want us to find out more and pick her brain about how all of us can have relationships that have the components necessary to have a partnership which is truly authentic and secure. On the lighter side, we're also going to pick the winner of my Couples Hold Me Tight weekend that's going to be January 30th. So without further ado, let's pick our winner. Debbie and Alan, you won a Hold Me Tight weekend on January 30 and 31. I'll be looking forward to seeing you and helping you just really develop in a relationship that you can feel so good about. So now, after we have this winner, I want to welcome all of you to the Couples Expert Podcast, and especially Dr. Susan Johnson. Welcome to the Couples Expert Podcast, Sue.
Great to be here, Stuart.
You know, one of the things that I think a lot of my listeners would like to sort of know is, how did you decide to get into this crazy field anyway?
Yeah, it is a crazy field because in the last decade in particular, every journalist and everybody has decided that they're a relationship expert. So it is a bit of a crazy field. I got into it because I'd worked with individuals and I'd worked with families and I'd worked a lot with adolescents. I'd done practically everything except couples. And then right at the end of my clinical training, I just happened to go to be put in a clinic for the last piece of my training where their main thing was that they did couple therapy, and I had not had any real training in couple therapy. There wasn't any real training in couple therapy in those days. And the head of the clinic said, but you've got lots of experience, so we'd like you to see couples on the hour, every hour, for 3 days straight, even though you don't really have to do that for your program, but we've got a lot of people sick, so would you mind? And like an idiot, I said, oh, sure, it can't be that hard. Because, I've done everything else. And I went in there, and the first thing that hit me was it was amazingly hard. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what to change. I didn't know what to focus on. The couple were fighting about absolutely everything in their relationship. And I couldn't, this drama was going on. And that they changed the topic every 2 seconds. One person had they had theories about what was wrong. It's usually what is wrong is my partner's personality. So, right. So then they were basically saying, would you please change him or her while I sit here? So I found it really overwhelming, but I also found it totally fascinating. And I also found it fascinating that when I went to the library and tried to look around for expertise on this, that there was really nothing there. There was things like help people make contracts with each other not to be nasty. Are you kidding? I mean, the people didn't want to make those contracts. They wanted to win the fight. There was things like persuade people that they're not being logical. Well, people didn't want to be logical. It's like they're not logical. They're totally emotional. There was things like teach people insight into their past. I'd give them what I thought were these wonderful insights, and they'd say, yes, that's really interesting, and then turn around and attack their partner again. Right. So I basically started taping my couples, taping them fighting, taping them starting to make up, taping me working with them, and I became completely obsessed. And that's very interesting, because science starts in systematic observation. Always it starts there. And, I wasn't trying to be scientific, but I was watching the same couple 10 times. And I started to see patterns. I started to see patterns of how they danced together, patterns of the emotional music in the dance and how it created the dance. And a couple started to teach me how to work with them. And it was so involving that I started writing it down. And for my dissertation, we did an outcome study, which when I look back on it was totally insane. I mean, it was totally insane. It's like somebody trying to write, an award-winning novel when they haven't even written a short story, but we did it and the results were amazing. But I still didn't quite understand what was going on and why we got these amazing results. And by the way, 30 years later, we're still getting those amazing results in study after study after study. And also the research says that our results last. So that's very encouraging. But I didn't quite understand what was going on. And then what started to happen was that the science of adult bonding, the science of attachment, which had only been applied to mothers and children and had totally revolutionized the field of parenting and the way we saw children, it had already done that, started to be applied to these adult relationships. And I started reading the first little articles on this, and I started realizing, oh my God, what we're doing here, and the reason why it makes such a difference, is we're helping people create these amazing attachment bonds, bonds that we rely on all our lives, that are safe havens to go to, secure bases to go out from in order to risk opening up and exploring the world. And we're starting to really, that's what we're doing here. Once that started, everything changed. I started to understand the couples drama, why people get so upset. I started to understand how they freak each other out. I started to understand why the things we were doing transformed relationships. And over the years, the last 20 years, the science of adult bonding and the science of intervention, of us doing emotionally focused couples therapy, has just sort of developed in tandem. We are the only couple therapy where we have a clear science of relationship, what makes relationships work, why they're so important, what goes wrong, and how to put them right. We're the only couple therapy that can be on target in that way, because what we do is not based on opinion or anecdote or a therapist's personal experience, what they think matters. What we do is based on all these scientific studies. So then I became even more enthralled, even more fascinated. I mean, in civilization, we've always accepted that love's a mystery. And suddenly here we are cracking the code. Who can walk away from that? So I just worked with more couples. We did more studies. We worked with couples facing traumas, facing depression, facing all kinds of crises. And it's been an incredible journey. And I still find it totally fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, you talk a lot in your books about a dance, and even as you were talking just a moment ago, you mentioned sort of that dance, and you used tango, I know. And yes. I'm curious why you chose the tango and why that dance, and what exactly do you mean by that metaphor with love is a dance?
Love is a dance because it's two people moving together, hopefully in a good relationship, in synchrony, tuning into each other's cues, coordinating moves, moving. When one person loses their balance, the other person helps them balance, just like you do in tango. Love is a dance between two people. And we forget that. We think that love is something that your partner does to you or doesn't do. Love is something inside your own head. You feel loving or you don't. I mean, we focus on the fact that it's this incredible interaction between two people, and the music of that dance is the emotional signals that are going to and fro. And often we don't send very clear signals, or we don't understand our partner's signals, the impact we're having on our partner. And, part of what happens in our work is we help people change the emotional music, and then they can dance together in a closer, safer, more powerful way. So for me, I dance tango, Argentine tango. Argentine tango is not a set dance like ballroom dancing, like waltz or foxtrot. It's basically a dance that is all about attunement because it's improvised. There's thousands of steps, and you cannot predict what the steps are going to be. You have to connect with your partner, listen to the music, and you literally move in tune with your partner. And when you miss each other's cues, you come back and you find a way to correct it. It's an incredible metaphor for relationship. So I think it helps people think about love as a dance because we help couples see the dance they're caught in when it's negative. Like, for example, a classic one is one person feels kind of lonely and cut off in the relationship, and they push for connection. They don't know how to ask, and they don't know how to get it, and the other person doesn't hear, feels criticized. And so you get one person demanding and often becoming critical and saying, why aren't you there for me? And the other person just hears rejection and starts to turn away. And you get a classic dance of pursue, demand, followed by stillness and withdrawal, where the other person shuts down and shuts the other person out, and then they demand more, and the more they demand, the other person shuts down. And a couple will say, we don't know what's happened to our relationship. We don't know why we get in this all the time. And, underneath all that is emotional disconnection. From our point of view, relationships don't die because of conflict per se. Lots of couples have fights and they're just fine. Relationships die because of this disconnection where people don't know how to help each other, soothe each other, listen to each other's needs. They don't know how to do that. So we use the dance metaphor. We say to people, the reason you're stuck is not because there's something wrong with you or your partner, or because your differences are too big. You're just stuck in this dance that's sort of taken over your relationship. And there's good reasons for you to move the way you do in the dance, but we'll help you see the dance. And then you can help each other out of it. It's the pattern of interaction you get caught in. Your pattern is one that leaves you both alone. And that's terribly painful for human beings. So we'll show you how to dance together in a new way.
And what comes up for me when I hear you talk about that is, as a guy who is not a great dancer, that tends to, when my wife and I go dancing, step on her toes a bunch. I don't have to be the best dancer to have a great dance with her, as long as we're doing it together and having fun and sharing of ourselves on the dance floor. It can be so fulfilling.
That's right. And that's the thing about attachment and bonding. There's no perfect way to do it. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to perform perfectly. It's just like being somebody's mother and father. You don't have to be a perfect mother or perfect father. You just have to be there. You have to show up.
You have to get on the dance floor.
That's right. There is no perfect in love because it changes all the time. And we get all caught up with performance. And, we get worried, I'm doing it wrong and my partner's not pleased with me. And, oh, my God, this is awful and I don't know how to please them. And then we sort of freeze and shut down. And it's really the freeze and shut down that freaks the partner out, not us making mistakes. So, what we say to people is the performance anxiety just gets in the way. The main thing is just to be present with somebody. So, a man in my therapy says, but I don't know what to do, when she turns and looks at me like that and asks me to come close, and I don't know what to do. And I say, that's okay. Just turn and say to her, I see you're sad. I want to be with you, but I don't know what to do. And he says, well, that doesn't work. Then she's going to think I'm an idiot. I said, why don't you try it? Because what you've done so far, which is to shut down and run away, really doesn't work. And so he does it. He turns and he says, I see you're sad. I don't want you to hurt, but I don't know what to do right now. His wife bursts into tears and comes and hugs him. And he looks at me and says, how did that happen? Right. I said, she just wants you to be there. You're the solution. Your presence is the solution. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to turn up.
Yeah, my soapbox these days in my office is talking about, and I'm sure it's not a unique term, but I've sort of catchphrased it for my practice, is having an authentic relationship. Authenticity is about showing all parts of you and knowing that it's good enough for your partner and she loves you with all of you, not just parts of you.
That's right. That's right.
And along with vulnerability and that, just, what's more romantic than that?
Right.
Another question. I saw somewhere that you like Monty Python also.
Yes, I love Monty Python.
It's an incredible sort of combination, Monty Python and the Argentine tango.
Well, I grew up in England, you see. So I grew up in England and, Monty Python appeals to my English absurdity. It's I just love it because it's so creative.
Right. And what it brings up for me is the whole concept of the importance of laughter in a marriage and in a relationship, and how you see laughter and what it does from a healing perspective.
Well, we laugh when we feel safe and when we're open and listening to somebody. We can see how two things don't go together, or we can see the humor in things. It's kind of like we don't stand and laugh when we feel like we're facing a tiger. So we talk a lot about how it's good for couples to do things that are fun and to laugh. But I think the thing is, we forget sometimes that couples have a certain safety together to laugh, to relax into laughter, to see how things are incongruent, how strange things don't fit together, to get a joke. They have to feel safe. So what we see is that when people start to get out of these dreadful dances like demand and withdraw, and say things like, hey, we're stuck in that dance again. Is this one of these times when you just feel like I'm criticizing you? And the other person says yes, and the person who was speaking comes and gives them a hug. Then it can be funny. Then they say, we're stuck in the stupid dance. What did we call it? We called it, I'm trying to think of funny names now that my couples have given me. I think one couple called their dance fish and chips, and it's because they're fried to a crisp in the dance, okay, both of them. So, and then they laugh and they say, hey, we're doing fish and chips, and that's horrible, and so laughter can be great because it can connect you and it can change your perspective. So, yeah, it's great. But people can't find humor when they're fighting for their lives and feeling all alone.
But when you're not feeling alone, and this is what I tell folks, is even in the middle of a conflict, I know that with the security that my wife and I have been able to establish, one of the things that I get angry about, but sometimes then I go, wow, this is really cool, is I get in the middle of a fight, she has this way of knowing how to crack me up.
Yeah.
And I get mad at first, and then I said, wow, this is really neat. That
and
even in the middle of that.
That's right. And that's something that comes along with having this secure connection, knowing that the answer to the key question in love, are you there for me? Mm-hmm. A-R-E. Are you accessible? Can I reach you? Are you responsive? If I call, will you come? Are you engaged? Will you come close to me? When you have a positive answer to that, are you there for me? A question, then yeah, things are funny. And even when you are stepping on each other's toes, you can suddenly move into humor and find that attunement again. And that's great. And it's a sign that, couples are starting to get some perspective and starting to come out of this dance of distance and demanding and starting to be able to connect with humor. And yes, then humor can really help out. Humor can help you see something that's silly, like both being stuck in, fish and chips.
Right, right.
It can help.
And I think the underlying message there is, at least for us, it becomes, she knows that I have a tendency to hold on to things, so that if she can, and her effort at getting me to laugh, I'm able to internally say she's doing this because she knows how awful it feels for me afterwards. Right. So she's doing a positive intention, not just to get back at me.
You see, and then you're saying something interesting, because people sometimes say to me, this is a pretty, weird question, really. What is the one thing that you don't think that couples understand in relationships? Of course, there's no one thing, but otherwise I wouldn't have written a whole book.
Right. Yeah.
But I say the one thing is that we haven't understood love. And so people have no idea the impact they're having on each other. Like, people have no idea the positive impact, like turning and smiling at somebody and making a joke, reaching out with a hand, saying just something like, I see you're hurting, I don't want you to hurt, which takes about, a second and a half. People don't know the amazing positive impact they can have on someone's nervous system, because our nervous systems are tuned to those kinds of messages of safety from other people. They don't know what the incredible impact they have positively, and they don't understand the incredible impact they have on a negative level. Like, just for example, turning away, just stopping talking and turning your back on someone. People don't understand that fires off panic in the other person's brain, because we're bonding animals. And when you feel vulnerable and you're trying to reach someone, even if you're doing it in maybe a kind of an aggressive way, and the other person just turns their back on you or shuts you out, what you get is, I don't matter to this person, I can't reach them, I'm all alone, the relationship isn't, we don't have this connection. And for most human beings, that's a danger cue. We know that. This isn't me being flowery. This is what research says. That's a danger cue for our brain. We know that if we're all alone in the world, we're much more vulnerable, and we don't want to lose the people we love. So part of what couples learn in a good couple therapy is how they impact each other, for better and for worse. And then they can start to have more control over what's going on.
And then they can start talking about what their needs really are.
That's right. And that's the key. In the work we do, we help people in the end have what we call hold me tight conversations. And all the research says that when people can have these conversations, they heal their relationship. And when we check up on them years later, they're doing just fine. And a hold me tight conversation in the end is learning how to talk about your fears and your needs in a way that pulls your partner close to you, rather than pushing your partner away or overwhelming your partner. And these are bonding conversations, and we know enough now that we can teach people how to have them.
I want to piggyback on something you were just talking about, that feeling of being alone, because I don't think there's anything more overwhelming. And I reflect back on, I turned 60 this year. And basically, so I've got a perspective that goes back, and you don't hear it as often now, but you still do, this whole concept of the silent treatment. Couples who get upset with each other and thus make this decision. We're not talking. I'm not saying a word to you. You're basically dead to me. So I'm not even going to say I'm mad. I'm not going to say anything.
That is about protecting themselves.
Right.
It's hopelessness, really. It's like everything I say makes it worse. I'm getting hurt all the time. So I'm just going to try and block it all off. And of course, the trouble is, it's just as negative as the kind of worst things you can throw at your partner in anger, because the message there is, I can shut you out, therefore you don't matter to me. And the other partner goes into complete panic at that. And, there's a man called Jaak Panksepp who studies emotion in brains. And what he says is that in any animal that bonds and needs those bonds as babies to survive, there's a special pathway in your brain that's dedicated to go to alarm signals when the people you depend on basically give you a message that they're not there for you and they don't care. And Panksepp says you go into alarm. And so when you turn away like that, you just trigger your partner more, right? It's not a good solution. It's a disastrous solution. What we're really saying here is people need to understand that romantic love is not just a silly mixture of sex and sentiment. Mostly the media focus on the sex piece, right? That's just a piece of it. Romantic love is an ancient wired-in survival code to keep people you love close to you. So when that survival code, when the message there is, nope, this person could just turn away and shut you out, our brains say, my God, I'm in danger. I'm going to lose this relationship. I'm all by myself. And it does not help.
No.
It helps. The only time that helps is you get secure couples who know how to connect, who sometimes get stuck in negative patterns and who can say things to each other like, we're stuck in fish and chips. I'm feeling all kind of upset. Can I just go and get a cup of tea and then come back and we'll talk again? And the partner says, yeah, all right then, because the partner believes they'll come back. Now,
Right.
That's a useful use of distance, but usually taking distance doesn't help a relationship at all.
And that's where I talk about the whole timeout, and that's really what you're describing. But it has to be done with this mutual agreement of how we're going to do this, and there's a set definitive time, and you come back and you re-engage. All of those things are helpful when couples are realizing they're doing it because they care so much about each other.
Yeah, and it's still a tricky one. I mean, what I try to do is get couples to soothe each other by holding a hand or, just talking about the last time they did feel close. Or, there's other ways of dealing with that rather than the usual way couples were taught to take time out. I think doesn't work. It just freaks they come back after the traditional time out and fight again,
Right. Right. No, I don't disagree with that. The way that I do it it's a clear guideline, a step-by-step that we talk about it. And then when we do, I say to them, this is not going to help your relationship. This is just, let's tone it down, cool it down so you're not saying things you have to undo.
Yeah.
That's the whole concept. So that's great. You were starting to talk a little bit about intimacy and sexuality a moment ago, and and with your tango metaphor, the movie that has stuck with me over the years is the movie Last Tango in Paris. And I think it's a great movie for a lot of things, particularly when we start talking about intimacy and sexuality in a relationship, about that there really are different kinds of sexual experiences. And I know you talk a lot about that. Could you talk a little bit about your different, this different sexuality sort of relationships?
Yeah. Well, what we know is the way you express your emotion and the way you are used to engaging with somebody just on a personal level really, really defines how you are in bed. I mean, we separate in bed from out of bed like you're a different person, but you're not. You in the bedroom, you're whether you trust people and whether you're open to somebody and whether you can really let go and really be with somebody and take risks, that all comes out. So how you deal with your emotions and how open you are to people, how safe you feel with other people really comes out a lot in bed. And what we talk about is that bonding science says there's really three kinds of sex. There's what we call synchrony sex, where the couple are really tuned into each other. They're open, it's spontaneous, they can take risks, they can share their needs and their fears. They can come together. And, good sex is a huge act of coordination. It's as I put it, it's at least as difficult as putting together a piece of IKEA furniture together. It requires a lot of tuning in and responsiveness. And that's synchrony sex. And I don't think anyone can have that all the time. Right. But what we find is, though, that once you've had bonding conversations, and all the research is that securely connected couples have more synchrony sex than other couples. So it's a bonding activity. You feel closer. It just totally involves you. It doesn't just involve your body. It's not just about pleasure or procreation. It's about this incredible bonding experience. And then we talk about that there's another kind of sex that we call solace sex, where people who are really all caught up in not being sure they're loved, men and women, not being sure they're loved, always being worried about whether they're loved, always monitoring what's going on in the relationship to see how important they are to their partner, to see if their partner's really there for them. They really focus on sex as proof of love. They focus on what we call solace sex. They'll say they like the pleasure, but the point is to get this reassurance they're loved. So a man comes into my office and says, if my wife loved me, she'd make love to me at least twice a day. And his wife is so fed up with the pressure that she feels no arousal at all, of course. She just feels pressured. And if you listen to him, it's not about orgasm. It's about, when I make love to her, then I know she loves me. Then I know I matter to her. And, and if she doesn't desire me, then I say, there you are, you see. And he's all caught up, and it's all about anxiety. It's about soothing his anxiety. So sex becomes about solace. Women like this say, I'm always worried that I'm too fat. I'm always worried my husband doesn't really love me. But if he makes love to me, then I say, it's all right, it's all right. He desires me, it's all right. And so really, it's not really the orgasm that matters or the pleasure. It's the fact that, afterwards I can say to myself, oh, it's okay, he loves me. So this is much sort of narrower kind of sex because it's all focused on solace. And the other kind of sex we talk about is we call sealed off sex, where it's really people who say, we call them avoidantly attached. They do have relationships, but they basically have, for very good reasons in their life growing up, they've have a really hard time trusting someone and being vulnerable with them. And they sort of focus on performance and pleasure in sexuality. These are the people that say, well, I look at porn and I don't know why it upsets my wife because I just want an orgasm. It's got nothing to do with anything. I mean, I'm not really engaged or present. I'm not betraying her. I'm just getting some sexual relief. So they focus on, and women, there are avoidant women too. It's not just men. And they miss out the relationship piece. They focus on performance and on pleasure. I want a bigger orgasm. My God, I was hot tonight. I want to feel hot. The tricky part is there's a huge lack of connection with the partner there. And the partners often feel it. The partners say things like, I could be anyone. You just want an orgasm. So what we know from research is that the more avoidant folks who compartmentalize sex actually enjoy sex less. Because if you think about it, it's kind of one-dimensional.
Sure.
And their partners usually find it aversive after a while, if they want a relationship. And so we look at it and we say, a happy couple can have all these different kinds of sex sometimes, but there is moments when they are able to have synchrony sex, where sex is about bonding. It's about pleasing your partner, pleasing yourself, having fun, having an adventure, feeling closer. It's about all this. There's all these motives involved. It's like a huge symphony happening. Whereas these other kinds of sex, solace sex and sealed off sex, they're kind of like one beat. They're kind of like one line, one note is playing. It's not a symphony.
Boring.
So, well, it's sort of one-dimensional, So rather than a one line, it's a what you want is a symphony, right, at least some of the time, not just a one-line song. So what we know is that when we help couples have these bonding conversations, it seems that they're happier sexually. Our latest study found that. They're happier sexually. They're more tuned into each other. They're more responsive. how you are emotionally is how you are physically, right? Mm-hmm. They're more responsive and they're more able to have synchrony sex interactions. So it all sort of goes together here. You know, the bonding, sex is a bonding behavior. And as we understand love more, we're starting to understand sex more. And it's a lot more difficult than, well, you're alienated from each other, you're sealed off from each other, but just go get a few sex toys and take a few sexual risks and everything will be fine. Maybe sex will be a bit more interesting the first time you use the sex toys, but by time number 4, the sex toys aren't doing it. Mm-hmm. You know, it's really the engagement with the other person that makes sex hot or not hot.
Right. And I think the thing that it also doesn't deal with is when we look at as we get older and as, you know, you get a certain age and erections don't happen as easily as they once did, and there's dryness that you have to deal with, that if it's strictly about performance or strictly about let's just have this hot sex, and hot being defined as a physical release, you lose the relationship and you also lose the ability as how do I feel about myself now that my penis isn't getting erect.
That's right. And in Hold Me Tight, my favorite story is a couple who deal with that problem together. And, you know, they talk about the fact that once we do these bonding conversations, they're able to, instead of getting all freaked out about this and, you know, he doesn't desire me, I'm not a man anymore, you know, I'm not going to come on to her because I'm not sure I can keep my penis erect. Instead of that, they start talking about the fact that occasionally Charlie takes a nap. You know, and it's no big deal. It's no big deal because he isn't freaked out by it anymore. She isn't freaked out by it anymore. She says, well, I know how to wake Charlie up. You know, it's no big deal. But if you look at it, it's in the beginning when they first come in, it's a huge deal. Right. So we're really starting to understand so much more about sex.
Yeah, and that's great. Well, we're winding down a bit now, and I do have one other question for you that I think is a really important one, and I know you've been doing a lot of writing about it, which has to do with military families and vets. And I'd like you to sort of talk a little bit about how EFT applies in those families with post-traumatic stress, and because I think there's a lot of listeners out there that probably are dealing with that, either with their spouses or someone in their family.
Yeah. Well, the reason we work a lot with vets, we always have. We created a program for the U.S. military on doing the Hold Me Tight conversations with post-deployment vets. There's some research on the fact that these bonding moments are an amazing support for people who've been going through trauma. You know, I mean, the natural healing place for human beings after any traumatic experience is in the arms of the person they love. That's the natural healing place. And certainly our experience and our research says that almost the very best thing you can do from somebody who's been through trauma, any kind of trauma, war trauma, you know, accidents, physical illness, sexual abuse as a child, rape, any kind of trauma, that it makes sense to involve the partner and help the partner understand what's happened, because it impacts the relationship. You know, if you're suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, it's going to impact your relationship big time. So we help couples understand what's going on an emotional level, deal with it together, and we help couples build this safe haven where the person who's been traumatized knows how to turn and call for their partner, and their partner knows how to come in and soothe their nervous system and create this safe place for them to heal. And of course, the healing also takes the relationship to a whole new level of closeness. So, you know, the research that says that if you want resilience and the ability to heal from any kind of challenge in life, the very best resource we have as human beings is to be able to turn and have this loving connection with another human being. I mean, that's kind of what Christianity has said all these years. It's what every religious tradition has said. It's kind of what philosophers have said and poets have said.
Right.
But we haven't actually known how to make it happen. So now we do. So yes, we talk about that from our point of view. doing some couple education and couple therapy is absolutely incredibly important for people who are facing trauma. And right now we're starting to work with the Heart Institute here in Ottawa because people have had, heart transplants, heart attacks, their whole life has changed. And, the Heart Institute very wisely said to us, we do all these things, we give them stress tests and we teach them about their diet. But what they're telling us is that their relationships have changed. And when they get stressed out in their relationship, their heart rate goes up and they're freaked out and they forget to take their meds. And would you please help the couple come together and face this dragon called, I might have another heart attack, or I don't know what to do anymore because I'm now a heart patient. Would you please help them come together and face this dragon together? And we said, yes, we will, and we can, and we know how to do that.
So what you're really saying is the cure for cardiac problems is to go directly through the heart of yourself and your wife, and together, your two hearts together will cure cardiac problems, right?
Well, I don't think it's cure.
No, not cure, but help heal. How's that?
Yes. And it's sort of ironic, isn't it? Because of the image of the heart, the metaphor of the heart.
Yeah.
But yes, that's right. And I think all of this is, science is saying this isn't just sentimentality. You have to start taking your emotional needs for connection seriously if you're a human being. You have to see that they impact your mental, physical health. They impact how effective you are in the world. There's a beautiful study that looked at young career women and found that young career women, strong, independent young women who were able to confide in their partner and turn to their partner for support and who felt securely connected, were more confident, they were able to take risks out in the world, they were more effective at their jobs, and they reached their career goals faster. So the biggest resource we have in life is connection with someone who loves us, which is a very good reason for helping people develop these positive love relationships. And if I had said that 20 years ago, I would have then had to admit, but unfortunately, we have no real idea how to do that. And now I can say to you, we know how important love is. And also, we do know how to do it now. So this is hugely positive. This is a huge positive message.
My last question for you that I'd like before we end for today. And again, I want to just thank you very much for giving of yourself and your time and your incredibly hectic schedule and really giving time to my audience to really get such an important message. Is through the years, in all the work you've been doing, what do you think is the one thing you learned about yourself that surprised you? I'm a pretty extrovert. I come across as a pretty strong personality, and I am that. But I think the one thing I learned about myself is I'm a human being, and therefore I'm vulnerable. And real strength is knowing that, and knowing how to deal with vulnerability, and knowing just how much I need other people, not just to be social with or to have fun with or to work with, but how much I need, for example, my husband, who's been with me now for 26 years, and how I'm a much stronger person since I've been with him and learned how to turn to him and learned how to lean on him. I think we've made a mistake. We think that needing people is a sign of weakness. No, you don't get to choose that one. You need other people. That's just the way your brain is wired. The point is to teach people how to deal with that need effectively in a way that makes them stronger. So I think I've learned that, actually, and that's great. My couples have taught me that. Science has taught me that. And we all are in this human race together, so if we can all learn that, just imagine what this world could be.
That's right. And I talk about that in Love Sense. I talk about the fact that the way to change the world is to change our families and the way we raise our children and the way we are in the world. And the best way to do that is start to have these incredible, loving relationships.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Thank you, Sue, for coming on the Couples Expert podcast.
You're most welcome.
And you take care, and we'll all keep watching all the exciting things you're doing.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to today's episode with your host, Stuart Fensterheim. You're one step closer to reigniting that fiery passion with your partner. For more information and your 30-minute free phone consultation with Stuart, visit www.thecouplesexpertscottsdale.com. We'll see you next time.